Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is a meeting of the Nantucket Historical Commission. I'm Hillary Hedges-Rayport, the chair. We're meeting by Zoom. The meeting is being recorded and the recording will be available on the town's YouTube website. The link to join the Zoom meeting is included in the posting. So anybody who wants to participate can join and participate in our meeting in accordance with the Robert's rules that we follow. I'm just going to go ahead and confirm that everybody can hear me. So let's start with the commissioners. Angus McLeod.
Here.
Tom Montgomery.
Here.
Mickey Rowland.
Here.
David Silver.
Here.
Georgia Raisman.
Here.
Clement Durkees.
Here.
I almost called you Clement iPad because that's your name says. And we also have our staff liaison, Holly Backus, preservation planner.
Good morning.
And it looks like we have a guest, Marcia Fader. Marcia, can you hear us? I see she's muted, but
Yes, hi.
hi, thanks for joining us. So we might have, we hope to have some guests from the project because of course we do want to ask questions. The whole point of this is to be able to have a dialogue and get some feedback on our questions, which I know we have. So today we're going to be reviewing the 100% plan for the sewer force main 3, which is running from C Street down at the waterfront all the way up along Liberty Street and Pine Street out to Surfside Road. And we have included in the plans for the first time some of the bid alternates, which will be in addition to the sewer force main plan, possible enhancements to the accessibility and navigability for pedestrians, which is really terrific. So I can see that we've been joined by a couple more guests. Ken Bogrand, can you hear us okay?
I can, thank you. And I apologize, a little late checking in.
No problem. Thanks for joining us, Ken. And also David Gray.
Good morning, President.
Hi,
David.
good morning. Wow, that is a cool background you have. What kind of planes are those?
Those are a couple of the fighters that used to be stationed over at Otis.
Ah, that is really cool. What a great shot. Okay, so Holly, do you want to get us started by sharing the plans? David, do you know if Ziad is going to join us today?
I'm pretty sure he was going to. Let me
Okay.
text him.
Okay, thank you.
Bear with me, I got too many screens open.
Holly, I can also share it if you want me to.
Oh, that's fine. I got it.
Oh, okay.
Way too many.
So I'm going to propose that we focus on the specifications and then we focus on the bid alternates, which are because we hadn't seen those before, we just seen concepts, and we might be able to give some specific feedback on that before it goes out to bid. But maybe okay, so you're showing us now something that when I said specification, I was thinking the page CD 11 of the plans.
Which number CD?
CD 11.
There we go.
Okay. So Holly, if you can zoom in on the cobblestone pavement. And if, thank you, David. So here, it's a different specification from what the town had been using in the past. It's setting the cobblestones in a coarser sand. So we should get really good drainage with this schematic. So I think it's a big improvement. I did have an exchange with our preservation engineer who came to the island and made some recommendations, and he felt confident that this would be a big improvement in terms of drainage. I did have a follow-up question just about the top dressing and whether or not it would adhere in the way. I haven't heard back, but I think maybe he would have commented if he had any immediate concerns. The other thing that I'm noticing is that the cobblestones are actually, it's a little confusing. So where it says sand burrow, and you can see it says 9-inch max, and then you can see that stones are actually out of the burrow. So am I reading this correctly, that the stones are actually projecting, they have 6 inches minimum buried, and then there's actually a projection of it looks like about 2 inches. Am I reading that correctly?
I think you're correct, Hillary.
Yeah, which is also a change, because one of the things that was noted in our preservation engineering plan was that the stones were being completely buried, which makes them look just like, you know, floating in a sea of stone dust. So I think this is going to look a lot better too. So does anybody else have any comment about the cobblestone detail? Hearing none, you know, I just want to express appreciation to, I understand that the DPW developed this, or the DPW's contracted engineers developed this and supplied it. So want to express appreciation for the responsiveness to the feedback that we provided in our report. Moving over to the right, the brick sidewalk and vertical, oh, sorry, the other right, my right as I'm looking at the screen. Yeah. So I had one question here. Again, you know, we're looking at the curb being set with concrete on the sides, but not on the bottom, and pervious base. I had a question about the 6-inch wide curb. I think we've moved, the HDC has approved a specification. I think it's narrower. You know, we saw a lot of these 6-inch wide curbs used in the community, not the community pushing back on it. I think we've moved more to a 4-inch wide curb. So I wanted to note that and find out if anybody had any similar concerns or comment.
Hi, this is Angus. I was, and looking at the plan, the stretches of street, everything was referring to the details on this page, of course. And one of the things that I was happy to see is instead of there being a specified curb height, that it says varies. So there's more room for the older historic pieces of curbing that could be shorter, that we're not locked into a particular height. But I did notice that with the new curbing that went down on Easy Street, I took a closer look at that, and the bevel on the outside edge is what a difference that makes as far as softening the look of the stone. If that could be sort of the standard, I think for new material that is an excellent example. And I
So
think
that's,
it was
how
narrow-
wide is it?
I think
Sorry,
it was
Angus.
narrower than 6
Yeah,
inches, as you're
It's
saying.
definitely narrower. So I think we want to get a different specification for the new curb into this, and I think has been developed. Holly, did you ever get were you ever able to put your hands on it?
No, I was not able to not before this meeting, sorry. I know I previously provided you all with the plans that the HDC approved in 2017 for the Land Bank Park, which uses the new curve that was vetted through the HDC.
Holly, is there any chance just while we talk, you could potentially find that plan and look at it and see if there's a specification that could be used in this? Because I know they want to get this out to bid, and I think there is a lot of new curb that's going to be going in, and I think we want it to be more like that land bank curb that Angus had looked at. And I mean, I don't know if that detail, I can't remember if that detail was in the HDC approved plan from 2017, but I mean, I would suggest that we're talking about a 4-inch wide curb with a split face and a beveled eased edge. Granite. And this specification should be updated to match that.
You're talking about the spec right here.
Yeah, where it's new. So it says new or reset. So we probably need to change the drawing, because the drawing is, I mean, to be totally accurate, if this is new or reset, instead of saying 6 inches, it should say varied, see note, and we should have a note that the new curb has a specific specification.
Okay. Again, I'm gonna have to go. This was before, again, the historical commission, before my involvement. So I'll have to, again, look at those plans and see what the specs, but my understanding, the spec was all vetted through the HDC with the DPW. So, and I want to mention this with the loss of the DPW director. I am not going to, talk to the interim DPW or bother him. I can understand that he's probably very, very swamped. But we'll take a look at this. I'll work with David if David is amendable to that, to get this worked on.
Well, and Holly, I mean, I don't even think we don't need to refer to that spec. I mean, we could just put in a note. It should be 4 inches wide, not 6 inches, and it should have a split face and an eased edge. I was just thinking if it already existed,
right,
because it was developed before, it might be an easier way.
I'll take a look at those land bank plans again.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see if I can find it.
I'm pretty sure they were included for the land banks contractors to go through that.
Okay. I'm just going to see if I can find that at all. Probably have that somewhere. Sorry, I've lost my Zoom window. Yes.
Tom's hands up.
Oh, sorry, I can't see that. Tom.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Angus said a minute ago regarding what happened down on Easy Street. And I think having looked at a lot of the curbstones that they took out right here on my own street this past winter, a lot of these may be 6 inches at the base if they're older, but then where the finish road is, they seem to be angled back a little bit so that they're, within that 4.5 inch diameter that you're talking about, plus the easement. And I think there's a lot of those around Nantucket, especially along the route that we're talking about. I know David, I know Angus was talking about the brand new ones and making them look like they were old, but some of the stuff that these people are going to be taking up already exists.
Yeah, you're correct, Tom. A lot of the stones are thicker at the base and they do skinny up at the top. I'm making notes for these. Doesn't look like either one of the engineers are going to be present today, and they took the day off, which I think I probably should have done, but that's all right. I don't mind hanging out with good friends.
Well, David, we really appreciate you being here because, we are going to be asking for some changes to these plans. So somebody needs to hear that.
Somebody needs to say no.
No, somebody needs to hear the change requests. Is there going to be a problem, David, with our asking to change this curb width and get a specification that's more reflective of, what the HDC has developed?
No, I don't believe so, because a lot of these are alternates. I mean, the whole plan, the whole project can go out to bid, but the alternates will be where the fine tuning for this stuff is done. So that I don't think it's a overly heavy ask at all by any means.
Okay. And the curbing, there is, even in the regular sewer force main project, there is going to be a lot of new curb, not just in the bid alternate. So we just want to make sure the specification is right. So just for any avoidance of doubt, because it is a change request that we're asking, I think what we're asking for is, instead of this table saying 6 inches, it should say varies, see note, and there should be an additional note that says new granite curb should be 4 inches wide and split face and a beveled edge. Is that what we're talking about? And if so, could I have a motion to that effect?
Lori, I just have a question about the actual 4-inch dimension that we're talking about. Is that, to me, it feels, I know it's 6 inches feels wide. 4 inches to me feels a little narrow. Has anybody actually measured the curbs that are on the street? Like, Tom, have you measured the curbs in front of your house that they actually just put in?
The ones that they've just put in my house are the newer ones, even though I asked them to put in older ones. They did put the older ones back, but on either across the street from me and next door to me were cement, so I really had no choice there.
Right.
But like Angus was saying, and David has just reiterated, they're even the really old ones are wider at the bottom, and they could be a foot deep, but where they come out of the ground, they are narrower. And I agree with you, Mickey. 4 inches is narrow in some places. I think that to be substantial above the street, it should be a minimum of 4 inches, if not 4.5. I don't like the 6 inch either, but I'm just saying.
Well, if we're going to give a hard number like 4 inches, I think it might be kind of, I'd just like to verify that that's the right number. And so maybe, 4 to 5, I don't know, just something a little bit more, not quite so specific about 4 inches at this stage.
Well, I did measure the curbs outside on Main Street where there are curbs from the 1980s, and they're 4 inches wide.
Okay. All right. Well, that's kind of what I was wondering if they had measured. So
One of us could actually measure Easy Street, but they seem like they were 4, maybe 4.5, but definitely towards the 4 side rather than the 6 side.
Yeah. So would someone like to make a motion about this requested change to this brick sidewalk and vertical granite curb page?
So moved.
Second.
And okay, So we're just going with 4 inches?
Yep.
Okay, all right, great. I also, sorry, Holly, could you go back to the brick specification? I had a question and I don't know if there's anyone here who'll be able to answer it, but if you, yeah, so this note number 3, where accessible routes are less than 5 inches in width, excluding curbing, a 5x5 passing area shall be provided at intervals not to exceed 200 feet. What does that mean?
Again, this is coming directly out of the DPW specs. It's more of we thought this was a little bit more of a greater ask than we were anticipating as well, but I will note this one as well.
Well, I just didn't know what it means. Like, does that mean there's going to be a curb cut to go down to the street?
No, I think it has to do with the overall width of the curbing, not any downward cuts or crossings. I think this is like, say, there's a spot, something similar to
Passing
what
area.
yeah, something similar to what they just did over on, I think Francis and Union, where they had to move those telephone poles back, which gave it a little bit more width, and so a stroller could go by there. I believe this is what this is asking for. Again,
This is an ADA issue. They're
Yeah.
referencing sort of ramp widths and walkways. I mean, the sidewalks only need to be 4 feet, I think, at the most. So it seems like a pretty, I mean, no, there aren't any 5-foot wide sidewalks along this route. So they're going to have to build in these awkward bump outs to create these passing areas. So I think that's a little bit, I don't think they're going to be able to do it, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't either. I thought it brought in like a really kind of very difficult requirement that they won't be able to fill, or they'll only be able to meet it by improvising in really suboptimal ways.
Well, driveway curb cuts could provide that relief periodically. And they're occurring naturally, but to create a 5-foot bump out, I don't know how that would even work into the street, into the property line. It sounds awkward.
It does sound awkward. It sounds like the sidewalk version of all the bus pullouts on the Milestone.
Right.
So what do we want to do? Do we want more information, or do we want to suggest that it be removed, or?
I would recommend the latter.
Yeah, I just don't think it's congruent with what we're trying to accomplish here.
Right.
It's awkward.
Okay.
Unless it's some sort of requirement for accessibility, I think it's inevitably going to be a bad look in the end.
It's the likelihood of it being even needed, because 200 feet is a pretty long stretch without a driveway curb cut along this route. Chances are there will be a curb cut driveway. So maybe it's sort of a non-issue, but it still seems unnecessary.
Okay, so
Mickey, to your point, perhaps you might want to suggest that if it is a sort of a state requirement, in view of the historic nature of the community, that the state would grant a waiver with respect to this to be able to do what is reasonable, as opposed to what is technically the letter of the rules.
That's probably a good approach. I think they'd have to look at, or we would all have to look at each individual case. If they come up with an area where maybe one might be required because of the ADA requirements, then that might have to be studied as an individual spot and reviewed, and then given a waiver for that particular spot. But I think that's, that makes sense, Ken.
So maybe what we want to say is, instead of this note number 3, we want to suggest language that any Massachusetts AAB waiver request should be directed to the Commission on Disabilities. or any departure. I mean, I think what we're saying is that if they find that they have to deviate from these plans, or they have to request a waiver, we want them to talk to the Commission on Disabilities.
You might just be able to add to the end of the existing comment, unless a waiver is approved by the Commission on Disability or something to that effect. So that you have it there and you give them a heads up that there could be a waiver, but it would be one that would be needed to be approved by the Commission on Disability.
Yeah, but
Well, it actually has to be approved by the state.
right. But we
Okay.
can't. Yeah, any waivers would definitely have to go through Boston. And again, the likelihood of it being needed is pretty small.
Is it,
Yes,
excuse me,
Georgia.
is this paragraph even necessary?
You mean this note number 3?
Yeah, note number 3. Would it be possible for us to suggest that it simply not be there?
I
Is
don't
it
know.
We can-
included?
These are engineering notes and engineers tend to overdo it. So this would have to be something that the engineer of record is going to have to take and look at. Of course, they're just trying to cover it.
Well, I agree with Ken. If it is necessary, I would say if accessible routes if accessible routes are needed, and then go through this and then say unless a waiver is sought and granted.
Well, so I want to point out here, this note number 1, I want to express appreciation that this was a change from the 75% plan, because the 75% plan said that the maximum allowable sidewalk and curb ramp cross slope should be 1.5%. And we pointed out that actually it's 2%. So why not, by law? So why not make it 2%? You're probably going to need that extra 0.5% of cross slope. And they did change that. And looking at this note number 3, I think it's just them giving themselves a huge out. So, and it provides like a big opportunity in the field for them to make all kinds of departures from these plans to create passing lanes. I don't even know what a passing lane is or looks like, or what it would do to the sidewalk. So I would like to suggest that we take out this language, but they do need to address the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board requirement. So instead put in
Request a waiver
So-
when
yeah,
that comes up. But
Or
look at number
general
2.
language.
but let's hear from Mickey for a minute, because he's on the Commission of Disabilities. Yes, Mickey.
Thank you. The other, related comment is note number 2, to maintain a minimum 3-foot clear at any permanent obstacle. There are lots of those situations along this route. So what is that going to mean? Is that
Yeah.
gonna bump the sidewalk out into the street each time they hit a phone pole or a hydrant, which is all over the place.
It's not possible. I mean, and thank you for pointing that out, Mickey. Like, there's just, these drawings have less than 3 feet clearance in I mean, this shows rebuilding sidewalks around telephone poles all over the place with less than 3 foot clearance.
Yeah, so maybe something to the effect that where the sidewalk cannot meet the ADA or MAAB requirements, that waivers should be requested where possible, or where needed, I guess, just request waivers. Because
Yeah.
both 2 and 3, especially 2, are going to be very difficult to conform to.
But we
Yeah.
don't want to put the contractor in an awkward position where they're torn between, what the state requires and what we want as a local, historical setting. So, I mean, who has the responsibility of getting that variance?
That's a good question.
Well, from what I know from research that I've done in the past, it's the responsibility of the town, if they actually, repair even a tiny bit of repair to a sidewalk, that it needs to meet the ADA code. And if it can't, because it's someone's front step or it's like a valuable tree, there's a process to request a waiver, and the request is made of the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board. And if it's a historic town, in any town, that would be made with the support of the local Commission on Disabilities, saying, we know the area, we reviewed this, we're okay with the waiver. And if it's a historic town, it's also made with the support of the Massachusetts Historical Commission, liaising with their, counterparty at the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board, which, by the way, is like 3 people. I mean, it's a very, very small department. So I think what we're seeing here under these notes, note 2 and 3, is this plan is putting it on the contractor to comply with the requirements, but not really making it, not being specific about how they're going to do it, and kind of setting up a situation where they won't be able to do it because the plans are clearly not in compliance.
Right.
I think where you and I were earlier this morning, Hillary,
Yeah,
this all comes right into focus.
yes,
Where you have that huge tree at the junction of Lily Street and North Liberty Street, where there's a telephone pole, there's driveways, there's
a hydrant.
and there is a real live handicapped individual that lives 50
Yeah.
feet from that location and uses
Yes.
it all the time.
Yes,
So,
Mickey?
yeah, I think what we need to suggest is that the town really does need to address this issue ahead of time. I don't know what it does to the bidding, issue,
Right.
but it's something I think it's the town's responsibility to deal with, at least writing a letter to the AAB, or maybe requesting I hate to say something like a blanket waiver, but some relief from this requirement in countless situations along this route. Because the contractor, if we don't do that, then the contractor is going to bump out into the street around every phone pole.
Right.
Which
Marcia, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what everyone else is saying, and also just that if a contractor has to set a bid for these notes 2 and 3, their bid price is going to go so much higher, because it's so there's so many unknowns that you cannot do. It's just not reasonable to set that up to a contractor to bid on.
Yeah, I think the town has to deal with this. And I don't know if I guess they have to give a bid price, but I don't know if anybody knows where they're going to start this project. Are they going to start in the sewer beds, or are they going to start it in town?
There is a timeline in this plan, Holly, somewhere, I think at the beginning, there is an order of work.
That's all gonna depend also on the contract. There may be 2 crews, there may be 3 crews. We don't know yet.
Mhm.
Starting at each end, in the middle.
Suggested sequence of construction.
Starting in
So
town.
basically the setup, and then they're starting at C Street.
Mhm.
Can you scroll down, Holly? So, yeah, step lanes, Center Street. So they're just going in order
Yeah,
from
we-
C
we
Street.
walked it. Right.
Yeah. Well, just in the interest of moving on, because we're not going to be able to solve the problem of what should be done. But we can at least control for some surprises that we would be unhappy with. What does everybody think of the idea that we would recommend the removal of note 2 and 3 and changing it with a process where if they identify departures from the plan because of the need to accommodate ADA requirements, that kick off a process of consultation with the Commission on Disabilities and the local historic commission.
I think a version of what Ken Bogrant suggested earlier sounds pretty feasible to me, as well as getting rid of 2 and 3.
Well, does somebody want to make a motion about what to do?
It has to involve the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board. I mean, they're the final word on those variances. So, I mean,
But do you want to put that in this language? Do you want to put that on the contractor to be getting in touch with the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board?
can we just flag it for now, Hillary, and just say looks like a problem area for the town, and this is it's almost undoable, you know. And just
Well,
what
can
the
you
Nikki,
answer-
this is going to go out to bid. You know, our feedback is due on August 2nd, and this is marching ahead because there's a huge, like a $28 million revolver loan that will not be available unless a certain timeline is adhered to. So
Can we say, Hillary,
yes, Georgia.
like all routes, instead of 2 and 3, say something like all routes should have reference to or should create accessible areas within the meaning of the state ADA. And leave it at that and let them figure out how they're going to deal with that. They're going to approach the town will say, talk to the Disabilities Commission, and then they'll refer to the Architectural Access Board. But
Well,
we've covered it in
but-
some generality.
That's kind of what it says right now, Georgia,
Yeah,
and I don't
that's
think we can
specific.
rely on the consultation. I mean, it's what the language actually is directing them to follow the ADA requirement, but then it's also supplying a set of plans that unless they're radically changed, will not meet that requirement. And then it's silent on the process for how to resolve these things.
It's less specific than the current language.
I think that this is a can of worms for the contractor, and the contractor just wants to know what they're bidding on. And with a comprehensive plan like this, where everything has been documented about where poles and hydrants and widths of sidewalk are, all the areas that are of concern that wouldn't meet the accessibility standards should already be flagged and have waivers for them, for the contractors coming right into it.
I mean,
Yeah, they haven't, that's the problem. They haven't made any provision for the requesting of waivers. They've only made provisions for the impossible changing of dimensions.
I mean, the reality is that if one were to walk this route, there would just be maybe a handful of places where you could meet the accessibility. It's almost easier to go out and say, where can we? Because you can't. You just can't. So like if you walked it and you'd say, okay, well, maybe there and maybe there, I don't even think you'd get 5 spots where you could meet accessibility.
Can I, and that's, I actually think it's more than that, Marcia, but it's definitely an issue. But in the interest of moving along, could I suggest that we remove the language of 1 and 2? I mean, sorry, 2 and 3 on this note. Could you look at the note again, Holly, for CD11, page CD11 on the brick sidewalk? And we replace it with a statement that says, where ADA accessibility cannot be achieved, waivers will be requested in consultation with the local Commission on Disability and the local Historical Commission. So that basically says, you know, you're going to have places where you can't do what's on the drawing, and you're going to need to request waivers, and you're not to do it unless you talk to the local stakeholders.
I think that works. I'm not sure what it tells the contractor in terms of what if they don't get the waiver. You know, that might have to be then an extra, I guess, that they would have to add on.
Yeah.
Not sure how that works.
Well, then they're gonna, like, in this corner, Holly, can I share my, how am I gonna do this?
Hillary, I don't think you guys are going to be able to solve this. I think what really should be done is you should be making a recommendation through David to the engineers that there's a problem with respect to this particular language, and they need to come back with a proposal how they see addressing it in a meaningful way, that a contractor, that someone bidding on this contract is going to be able to understand it and come back with a reasonable bid.
I think that's good advice.
Yep.
Ken, is it reasonable to get, or David, is it reasonable to get that turned around and back in before the deadline of the 2nd of August?
Well, once again, most of these are alternates. And we don't have to accept any of them, however they're bid, going forward. I know that Ziad and Frank were both very cautious to not only meet the local regs from DPW, but also the state regs. But I have it all written down, what they need to do. I mean, I do know that Ziad just texted me back. He's not back in until Monday, so you're already talking the second there. So I think this can be changed still going forward. I don't think these are locked in stone. It's just a matter of we got to just take and get this out to meet that deadline, that state deadline. So a lot of these
Well-
can be changed still.
It looks like this is the standard for the whole program. I mean, is this curbing detail or the sidewalk notes there, is that really an alternate, or is it the standard?
Only wherever we take and touch any sidewalks along the route, everything that was there is going back, that can go back. You won't see any of the new granite curbing in an area like, was it 19 Lily Street or whatever like that. We're gonna do the best that we can as far as that goes. A lot of the sidewalk stuff was request from the DPW. It was not originally part of our process. We were only gonna minimally touch sidewalks the best we could going along, so.
So it's just very important, taking Ken's point on, which is this, it's not going to be this group that solves this. It's for the engineer to come back with some satisfactory response. But it is very important to me that we put in this contract an expectation that there will be consultation with the local Commission on Disabilities and the local Historical Commission, where accessibility requires either a waiver or a change.
That'll be handled by the town. That won't be handled by the contractor. That'll be handled by the town.
But it'll be the contractor that says, guys, we have a problem here, right? So I just like to see if it's appropriate, and tell me if it's not appropriate. I would like to see a note that says accessibility waivers or accommodation will be reviewed with local commissions.
I think that's a good note to put in there. I don't know if it replaces 2 and 3 or just adds to it, but I think it's a good note to have on the plan.
I agree.
Okay, so that was Mickey, can we consider that a motion, and Angus a second?
That's the motion.
Okay, so
Okay.
we have two motions to vote on. The first is the motion to change the language about the new curbs that was moved. I think it was Tom that moved it, and it was seconded. And then the other one is to add an additional note about local consultation regarding changes or waivers for accessibility, moved by Mickey and seconded by Angus. So can I vote on both those motions together?
Mhm.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, so let's vote on those motions together. Georgia,
Aye.
Angus,
Aye.
Mickey,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Clement,
Aye.
and David.
Aye.
And I am also an aye. And those are the regular commissioners just voting. And Susan, thank you for being here as well. I'm just noticing that you joined. Great. Okay, so moving on to the actual schematics.
You guys send me those motions?
Yes, we
writing?
will. Holly and Angus and I will write them up after reviewing the tape for the exact language and get them to you before the second. Holly, did you have any is that okay plan, Holly?
The second on Monday.
Well, I can write, I'll write it
Yeah,
up.
that would be helpful because
Yeah.
I've got other things I gotta do.
Yeah, no, I'll write it up. I just want to make
Thank you.
sure you're okay with my doing that.
Absolutely. I just do note
Okay.
that David and his guys were wanting to get comments back by Monday, so that would be
Yes.
nice. Absolutely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, the other thing that I just want to look at are the bid alternates, because these are areas that, and I'm just going to share it, that we did not get to see in in plan before we just saw photos. So we have some additional new brick sidewalk and vertical granite curb. Just going to go through the whole plan to see if anybody wants to bring up anything. I'm going to scroll through it slowly, and please, speak up if there's anything that you feel should have been noted that wasn't noted. So this is Center Street, and then we go over here to Lily Street. There is an area here where there's no sidewalk. Does anybody on this call know why they would be putting in, and this is not a bid alternate, this is, we're like right here, remove existing concrete sidewalk and install new brick sidewalk and vertical granite curb. We also have remove and protect existing concrete bollards as required. So that's a new addition, and we want to appreciate that that was noted. But there is a new sidewalk going in here, but there's nothing going here. Does anyone know why you wouldn't put a sidewalk here? Maybe it's irrelevant at this point.
Hillary, I believe, and I remember walking this, and I believe that was brought up when Frank was meeting with us last time, is that's part of Lily Street that's very narrow. There would be a lot of different things that would have to be done to accommodate that. So I think that was the reason why.
It just didn't work to have a sidewalk there.
There's tree, if I remember correctly, this is a spot of Lily Street where the houses are right up to the road. There's trees that are there. It would completely change the streetscape.
Holly is fairly right about that. We measured that, and I believe it was exactly 14 feet. But there is a very high curb and a telephone pole directly across the street from 14 Lily Street. And
Okay, so
later on,
that's here.
yeah.
This is
Later
14.
on, when I went down, you went home the other way, and I went down Lily Street the correct direction. And down by 32 Lily Street, which is a little more to the back towards, that is the narrowest part of the street right there, where it is 12 feet 6 inches. And there's already a sidewalk there in front of this house here, 32, where the cursor is right now. The house right there next to that little street, right? That is the narrowest part of the entire street. Mm-hmm. And there's a sidewalk there. And there's also a very high curb on the other side with a telephone pole and hedges. And so I don't see any of them doing anything down there. And
well, here they're putting in, they're just replacing what's there. But here they've elected to put in a new sidewalk. And here, even though it's the same width, they've elected to not have any sidewalk. So there's no sidewalk along this whole stretch.
Just macadam, right?
Yeah, it's just people will be walking in the street.
Which
22
they are now,
and 20,
right?
yeah, which it'll be the same. I mean, it's probably something, I mean, it's something a neighbor meeting might have brought up, but I guess at this point it kind of is what it is. I mean, we're not gonna, can we record? Does anybody want to address this issue of a missing sidewalk here?
From what Tom just said, the narrowest part is beyond this. So, what's between 18 and 22 or 18 and 24 isn't any tighter than at 20, at 32. So the question is, if it's appropriate to add sidewalk between 12 or 14 and 18, why is it not between 18 and 22 or 24?
That's exactly right. I guess we can ask Ziad. I mean, at this point, that's a change in the scope. Should we just ask Ziad?
There's also a sign on a fence there. There's bushes and everything else, and it says, do not block driveway, but there is really no driveway there. Remember that, Hillary? Seeing that?
Yes, it's probably just someone's attempt at reserving parking for themselves.
If you look at the street view, on Google, you can see the trees and the bushes and where there's just that would be a lot of additional work, I think,
Right.
to acquire.
I agree.
Yeah. But I do agree with, okay, well, if not this section, why this section?
Yeah,
But
there's.
I
bushes here.
understand by looking at what's there, why 18 through 22 or 24 is not done,
Okay,
not proposed.
okay,
Hey,
so,
Tom, isn't that where Mr. Bennett's house was and there's handicap parking right there?
I
Well,
believe you're
it's
correct.
next door to that, and then we're not accounting for the fact that those people might not be here right now, and they also rent that. 14 was my Aunt Clara Baker's house, and the barn next to it was Bert Baker's plumbing shop, and that has now been turned into a house, and they rent those periodically throughout the year. So there just weren't cars parked there at the moment, but they park where there isn't any sidewalk at the moment, where exactly where we're talking about, where there's just a hot top kind of a sidewalk there. And that being a very narrow spot, as Holly puts out, with cars parked there, everybody's got to slow down practically to a stop, even though it's a one-way street to get through there.
I
so,
wonder if a sidewalk was taken out of there years ago when Mr. Bennett had that parking put in. I don't know.
possible.
I
No?
can also attest to right in front of 20 is a yellow line for no parking. So that gives a location for people to walk. So there's a lot of different things going on here.
Right.
so just in the interest of time of our review, I think it's kind of late in the day to bring up any kind of push for more sidewalk here. And I guess there were reasons why it wasn't put there that we
Right.
think we understand, but maybe we just stay silent on it. I want to point out that the bollards that we marked are captured now on this plan. So I want to express appreciation about that. And I want just to focus a little bit on this area. This is the sidewalk that's going to wrap around the tree. So this is a perfect example of the problem with accessibility. So right now, this tree is growing in the sidewalk. And there actually is a side, yes. So the sidewalk is shown here. It's not in red because it's not being touched. It's just staying. And then this is a bid alternate. So the proposal is the sidewalk will now come out around this tree and the road will be 14 feet. It's a one-way road, so that's plenty of clearance. And then it wraps around here. So it's like a 6-foot wide sidewalk. But then it narrows, and this is the sidewalk here. This is a telephone pole. This is a hydrant. I guess this code means hydrant. I don't know, there's a hydrant right here. And there are so many pedestrians here. I was down there this morning and like, I couldn't take a picture without getting a pedestrian in and like going bump. So the sidewalk goes up, pedestrians walk up Liberty Street on the sidewalk. And then they cross here where this proposed crosswalk is, and then they want to continue here. So people are, some woman was struggling with a baby carriage to get around the hydrant. And this is the proposed schematic. So this is an opportunity for us to comment on what can be done. I mean, this is a 2-lane road. This distance from here to here is currently 22 feet. Sorry, 22 inches, 22 inches. I measured it this morning. So if this is going to be, a standard 5-foot, 22 feet. God, where is my brain? It's 22 feet. And this is going to be a 5-foot sidewalk, leaving a 17-foot lane.
Can I comment about this for a second?
Yeah, please. I need to
I don't
clearly.
have the cursor, so if you would put your cursor on that little house at the bottom of the page that's square, that right
Yeah,
there,
that's a garage.
that is a garage. The house next door to it, and this doesn't look very, I don't know how in scale this is, but the house that's right there, right below the garage, is where Admiral Jack Baldwin lives. And he is a 100% disabled person. He goes around in a wheelchair, and he goes by there every day. He goes to the high school. He goes on his wheel in his wheel little buggy to the high school by himself up the street and to the high school swimming pool every day for exercise. Then he comes back home and gets changed, and he goes down to the Wharf Rat Club and works his way down through town to there and comes back. And then he's a very popular guy. He goes to the yacht club for lunch, and his wife meets him down there with the car, and he goes down with his wheelchair. He gets invited out to dinner, and he goes in his wheelchair, and wherever he goes. And so with this bump out, where that tree actually goes into the street a bit, right there where all I know is it used to be Bill Coffin's house. And then if they're coming out on the right-hand side, if you're coming down North Liberty Street heading to town, where they're showing that little bit of a bump out there that they want to add on, my God, that is going to be such a nightmare. It isn't funny, because the cars that aren't from around here come flying down Gardner Street, and a lot of these people go down Lily Street going 30 miles an hour, or they come around North Liberty Street heading towards me. And this is making it a bad situation worse, in my opinion. And so I don't know what the answer is, but I want to just point out all those things because I go by this spot 10 or 15 times a day myself. And like you say, when we were there on the bicycles this morning, there are so many people with baby carriages and joggers and bicyclists and people just walking around with cameras. And I mean, it's unbelievable. And I'd like to hear, I don't mean to put Mickey on the spot here, but I'd like to know what Mickey thinks of that.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. The issue that I see, there's a couple of them, but the first one is that where the crosswalk is down going across North Liberty, that gives you access to that narrow sidewalk running up North Liberty, but it doesn't give you any access because of the phone pole. It doesn't give you any access to the sidewalk that's wrapping around the tree. So that big bump out that they've created is almost an inaccessible wheelchair spot, because if it's a vertical curb cut right down to the pavement, you won't have wheelchair access on or off of that big bump out. So, they could, I'm not sure the bump out is even necessary. If they put curb cuts on either side of the tree and maybe drop the curb right at that intersection completely, almost flush with the road, and maybe just with, good lines, although they wear away, so that's maybe not a permanent solution. But I don't think they're solving the problem by building this bump out.
Angus?
This was a concern for me in the last iteration, and then we were going to see the more detailed plan, and here it is. And this is, to Tom's point about cars going too fast, if you narrow spaces, people will go slower. But as far as accessibility, to get around this tree only to be stopped at a high curb or the telephone pole and or the hydrant, what's the point? I don't understand it. To get to the North Liberty Street side, the west side of those poles, even going across the crosswalk, I think you're going across the crosswalk to a clear sidewalk of 1.5 feet or 2 feet before you hit a pole or a hydrant. So I don't see the point in it.
I mean, the only point of it that I can see being in this neighborhood is that you're almost creating sort of what they've done in that pocket park out by the Rotary lately. You're kind of creating a safe place, because if you are walking there, which I walk a lot, you don't have a safe place to even stand if a couple cars coming through. So that's the only thing I could think of. Not that it has to be that big, but there's so few places to go and stand to get out of the way of traffic.
It needs studying. I think it's a
Hillary, unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave because I've got another appointment that's starting now. So I apologize.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks for joining us. I'll copy you on the follow-up, okay?
Yes, thank you.
I also have to go to a meeting. Thank you, thank you.
Thanks, Marcia.
And I am
You
the
guys,
same.
why don't you guys,
unfortunately.
if you don't like these things, this was a DPW ask. If you guys don't like this bid alternate too, you can make some kind of a recommendation or a motion to us to remove it altogether. I mean, this was an ask by DPW. This was not our original plan.
Well, Marcia makes a really good point about a place to stand. I mean, and thank you for that recommendation, David. I mean, I think we would like to improve things for the pedestrians in a way that's consistent with the historic character of the town. I guess we're just concerned if maybe, is there anything we could suggest? Like, for instance, even if they relocated the crosswalk, it doesn't solve the problem for the people coming down North Liberty Street who are running into a telephone pole. And there's really no room to make the sidewalk any wider on North Liberty Street because there won't be clearance for 2 cars. But would it be make more sense for the crosswalk to go from the new blue area on the left to the new blue area on the right?
Well, that won't help the people coming up North Liberty. I mean, unless they just drop the curb. I mean, sort of an easy solution is just to keep all the curbs around that intersection flush so that you can get on and off wherever you choose to. I mean, a lot of wheelchair users right now need to be in the road. So they need sort of flexible access up and down on this to the sidewalk. So the more curbs that are flush with the street in the area is probably just the better.
I agree. And I think that spot that Mickey's talking about right there, where it's under the word sheet, I think that should be, I know that's trying to be the start of the sidewalk, but that to me, as someone that comes down the street all the time, is you're just turning out into the traffic more. That's all you're doing.
It's a road to nowhere.
Right.
Because the sidewalk goes to a pole and then you've got to get off and there's a high curb. So who is it really for? It's not for handicapped people. It's maybe for someone who wants to step out of the road. But I mean, if a car is coming, barreling down that road, curb isn't going to help.
So can I make a suggestion? It sounds like we might want to propose some tweaks to this design and that Dave would be happy to receive a note to that effect. So sometime over the weekend, if Mickey and Tom and I could go and look at this, and we have some suggestions that would be better, we could put that in a note.
Good.
Great.
Would the commissioners be okay with that? Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have anything that is like a non-starter for them about this drawing that they want to express that we capture?
Well, I'm definitely not in favor of having that, whatever that blue area is, under the word sheet there.
Well, Tom, you're going to be in the group that writes the note.
Okay.
So, but I mean, anyone who's not in the group writing the note, does anybody want to make sure anything is?
My issue is that there's the comment about the wheelchair ramp in the second note, and the crosswalk going to a place where a sidewalk that a wheelchair can't get up onto because the pole's right at the end of the crosswalk.
Yeah.
If
So that's what we're gonna try to resolve if we have any ideas.
Yeah. If the bump out happened, it would make sense for the crosswalk to at least make use between the but across there, not where the pole is. So it basically continues Gardner into Lilly with accessibility, but then you're on your own for North Liberty.
Okay, right. And I'm also going to note that this says install new brick sidewalk and vertical granite curb, but of course there is already granite curb. So I'm going to suggest that we make it clear that it's reusing existing granite curb.
And there's also brick there, so they can use the same brick.
Yes, and that should be clear in the note. I'm just making a note. Okay, thank you. So just moving on, now we're getting, too bad Marcia had to leave because this is right in front of her house. I think the new, the note in the blue that it's reusing the curb should be carried through. Does anybody else have any other comments or concerns about this area? They did note that these existing bollards are protected, which is nice. I think
That's good.
the arrow should also go here to both bollards. And I'll make a note of that.
Well, right there at 31 at Lucy Dillon's house, where they come down Liberty Street towards Brock's Court, where there's a new proposed crosswalk right there and the sidewalk. There's already a high curb there, and Lucy put a bicycle there that had a lot of orange day-glow orange
Okay,
stickers all over it, so they wouldn't whack.
This is Lucy's, this
that's-
is Lucy's
I'm
house.
sorry.
Yeah. This is the corner of
Yeah,
Hussey
India, sorry.
and India, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there's nothing changing in front of Lucy's house.
Okay.
I don't have any comment. Does anybody have anything they want to say about this other than just making sure that the curbing is reused?
There's a stop sign there, and I think that in both directions, that's quite helpful.
Is that a new stop sign?
No, there's a
Oh,
stop
okay.
sign coming up Liberty Street from Brock's Court, and there's a stop sign coming down Hussey Street into that intersection.
Yeah. There's no signs proposed here, so I think we might also want to specify that if there is a sign plan added to this, we would like to see it.
In this area, I remember there being a really big difference between the south side of Liberty and the north side of Liberty. One seemed too high and the other seemed too low.
Yep.
There wasn't any note in the plan about mitigating that. So I guess it'll just sort of stay the same.
I think there's quite a bit of cement curbstone there as well, Angus, that's going to have to get replaced by
Yeah,
granite.
that's all along here.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so just continuing. I didn't really have any, I mean, I think the other concerns we had just of certain bollards to be, you know, they've all been addressed, all the bollards that we pointed out. And then we've discussed the specifications. I have a question for Holly and David, you know, are there other places in this plan, like for instance, in the specification sheet, which I'm not sharing right now, where it makes it abundantly clear that the curbing must, you know, especially the old schist curb must be protected and stored and reinstalled? How do we make sure the contractor knows that?
Thought it was abundantly clear from our discussions with Ziad and Frank and even David that was the intention.
I agree with that. I'm just
Okay.
wondering, where is it in writing?
I don't know.
Because the specification page says, you know, new or existing. Well, can we just flag that as, you know, a follow-up to make sure that it's adequately expressed in writing in the bid materials?
That all materials is existing. Unless,
And I'll work on that because I didn't actually review the additional specification sheet, which is very long.
it is, and I want to note for the commission, if you didn't get a chance to look at that, that also includes your documents that you've been working on for, I mean, I think that's fantastic. And I want to thank David for, you know, first of all, extending this time. You know, we have to make sure it's clear that we understand that these bid alternates were DPW driven, not sewer. And David really is trying to work on fixing that catastrophic failure from 2018. we commend him for working with us. So thank you, David.
Thank you.
But a good man on the job.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, absolutely. Is there anything else to discuss here? I mean, I feel like we've covered the things and flagged what we need to follow up on. Anything else? Any other concerns? Okay, hearing none. David, again, I just want to thank you so much for your concern, your attention to the street artifacts, taking this seriously. And hopefully we'll have I think we're right on track to have a terrific project. So thank you so much.
Hillary, I have a quick question.
Oh, yeah.
David, this is to you, I guess, during the process of when this is all going to be taking place, is there sort of a protocol as to what will happen when questions arise during the construction?
We are going to have a engineer on the ground that will be the oversight engineer. It won't be Ziad. Frank's our OPM, so Frank's going to be in this project the entire time. But we are going to have boots on the ground like we did with the Schimmel project. That engineer will actually be able to meet with people. And Drew was our engineer the last time. He was actually the one that coordinated meetings and everything else like that. So once we start, we're not going to turn off our attention to anything by any means. And we brought this to you guys as early as we could to try to make everything work the best we can. And I think it's going to be a good project. There was there's some crazy ass that I was not keen on, but we have to all work together. And now with what's going on now with the DPW, it's even going to be a bit more confusing for a while, I think. But I'm here to try to work with everybody, and Holly keeps me honest. I know that.
Hey, David, before we let you go, when you said DPW, I remembered I did hear something else from our preservation engineer, which I wanted to just read for everyone's information. I asked him, the drainage is good with the sand, but what about the adhesion that we need? Because we wanted a mix of clay and sand. He says, I'd say the most important criteria, and maybe 95% of the battle, will be getting a sand that drains well. This specified sand should do that. The other 5% of the battle will be getting a sand with some small amount of fines, maybe 10 to 15%, that makes the sand dirty sand and imparts some cohesive properties that help hold that top inch or so of dressing in place around the cobblestones. Even with that, adding and sweeping in new sand dressing at the top is normal routine maintenance for cobblestone paving. That said, this specification allows for up to 10% fines, which is roughly aligned with what Tilson, et cetera, were recommending around 1900, as in the year 1900. This specification doesn't set a minimum for those fines, but it allows for them. Even if the fines were 0%, this sand would still be a huge improvement on stone dust. I just wanted to read that into the record. So we captured it, and I think we made a lot of progress on the specification for cobblestones. So it'll also give us an opportunity to compare under this improved specification, the areas that are rebuilt to this specification to the areas that have been built to the older specification, so that we can watch it over time and have a record of how to continually get better at taking care of our cobblestone roads.
No, and I appreciate that. And as one who has plowed cobblestone roads many times, which is not fun, it's just a matter of, I think one thing that this is going to do too, that I think you guys have brought up, is it's going to give us the ability to experiment with some kind of a process on being able to put these cobblestones down and hoping they stay in place. I mean, you can tell the differences, as we talked about before, up by Ray's Court, up by I mean, there's different installation techniques of different types there that have, they haven't lasted, honestly. And I know quite a few cars lost their oil pans up by Pleasant Street. So I think this is going to give us a good base for I don't want to say a test project, but or an experiment, but it's going to probably give us a good base to go forward. Not me putting cobblestones down, but maybe someone at DPW.
So, great. Well, David, thank you very much for joining us. We'll move on to our other agenda topic, and we will follow up with notes for your consideration along with your team on this project.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hillary. And it was nice to meet you at town meeting in person. And Holly will keep me in line. Don't worry about that.
Thanks, David.
With Holly on the job, I'm confident.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
I
Have a
think
great
Mr.
day.
Montgomery needs to stay out of trouble though, because Tom can get in trouble.
That's a
All
tall
right.
order.
See you later. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, so now we want to move on to Six Skull Island, and I'm going to turn the reins over to Holly.
All right, thank you. So first off, I hope you all enjoyed reading the detailed proposal for Gull Island. Obviously, you saw a lot of the stuff in the first part one, but really it gets a pretty good understanding that the previous owner, through no harm from the town, because they definitely tried to no avail, to get this house into compliance. So again, I think the town, as well as both commissions, are happy that there's a steward, Sarah, who's actually wanting to bring this structure back to life, and it hasn't gone with a demolition by neglect. So very happy on that. It's fairly boilerplate, as far as their requirements for the part 2, indicating all the different aspects of it. And you probably noticed that it's broken down into sections, and then the correlating photographs that are in the document as well. You'll also see in the packet back to the enforcement actions and abutters in the past that have asked the town to, really take a look at it, and there was attorneys, the whole 9 involved. The condition of the structure. Back here's a town attorney writing a letter of what was going on, the violation as recent of 2019 before Sarah acquired it. But here's some great photographs. Again, you've all seen this. The scan that Preservation Institute did. And this is where you get into the nitty-gritty of the structure. You all saw these in the significant section as well. Just go through these here. You've seen the photographs, which are fairly, they correlate with one another. I will mention that this part 2 is strictly for the main dwelling. I think it sounds like from a brief email I had with Brian and Sarah that the carriage house or garage, since MHC has made that determination that it's also a contributing structure, which you all agreed upon. So she's going to try to go through that process down the road for historic tax credits. But for right now, what's before you is just for the main structure. I will tell you that the garage will be before the HDC for both their historic determination as well as the proposed rehabilitation work on that structure. So that's good to know. So you'll see that when they're ready for part 2. So these are the photographs. Again, very, very boilerplate, and you've seen all these before. Very detailed. And then on the back, actually, yeah, right here are the plans of the existing floor plan, elevations of what it was before getting approval from the HDC. Let's bring it back to here. Yeah. So what you see before you is what was approved with the HDC. I did email you all those plans this morning. Apologize, I couldn't give them to you sooner. Where did I go with them? But those were what were recently done in May of this year. Window survey, door survey, as you probably have heard Sarah talk, she does a lot of the work on the windows herself. And then this back section is typically boilerplate about the cleaning of the masonry. I guess that my understanding, that's something that needs to be included. Again, boilerplate. So what I have proposed to you all, sorry, it's in Word. Apologies. The computer's not wanting to grab it. Okay, here it is. So the proposed letter that I have submitted to you all for your consideration. The Nantucket Historical Commission is in support of Part 2 of the Massachusetts State and Federal Historic Rehabilitation Tax Credit application for the house located at 6 Gull Island Lane. The commission determined at their July 30th meeting that the contributing house will undergo extensive restoration to protect the integrity of a contributing structure within the local district in the National Historic Landmark District of Nantucket. Commission further acknowledged that the proposed rehabilitation work for the timber frame, yeah, I gotta fix that word, timber frame, Hannah Gardner House will take a contributing structure that has undergone decades of deferred maintenance and neglect by previous owners, acknowledging the fact that the town of Nantucket tried to rectify these issues to no avail, will ultimately be preserved for future generations and will not be lost to demolition by neglect. The Nantucket Historical Commission supports the restoration proposal of 6 Gull Island in its entirety, as it will preserve an example of Nantucket's domestic architecture located within a setting that has undergone little alteration to the landscape. The proposed cobblestone driveway off the Cobblestone Way will ensure the feeling of the 1800s. The commission is grateful for the applicant's commitment to preservation, diligence, and care with the Hannah Gardner House, as evident in the proposed retention of the original interior and exterior design material. It should be noted that the proposed rehabilitation work in Part 2 has already been vetted and approved by the Nantucket Historic District Commission in 2020 and 2021, respectively. Even the addition of the Captain's Walk, as they've notated in this application. I thought that was good to differentiate between our lingo and theirs, or roof walk, as outlined in the guidelines for protecting historic architecture landscape of Nantucket Island, building with Nantucket in mind. The roof walk was found to be keeping with the typical Nantucket style home. As the Historical Commission's partner in the Certified Local Government Program, we are confident, I gotta switch that around. We are confident that their review was thorough and accessible to restore the Hannah Gardner House back to its grandeur. And that is my proposal for your consideration.
Thank you, Holly. I'd like to invite the commissioners, especially those who also serve on, we do have folks that serve on the Historic Structures Advisory Board and regularly review designs, but certainly invite everyone to ask questions about the Part 2.
So I've got
Mickey?
a couple questions. Holly, this is for grants for money. They're removing a big portion of the back of this house and restoring the front part. Is there a distinction between the funds that they're asking for regarding just the restoration of the front part as opposed to the adding of material in the back, which is different than what's existing?
So my understanding that is the historic tax credits are being requested for just the main block of the structure, so not the add-ons, because of the fact that there was work already approved. Again, remember, she started doing work not realizing this would actually be a proponent for historic tax credits, and everybody was actually kind of shocked on MHC's support for this. So of course, this is kind of moving it in the next direction. But with obviously MHC's support of everything being eligible, that's great. That actually helps from that process, but she's only asking for the main block of the structure.
Okay. So, my other comment, and this is, I think I'm certainly in favor of them getting the tax credits. I think it's a great thing for the project and a good sort of precedent going forward. You know, they did propose to do some things to the back of the house and a little bit even to the front of the house that were not so much in agreement with what the Historic Structures Advisory Board had recommended. Of course, they did eventually get HDC approval for it, so that's really what finally counts. But there were some things that they changed to the main building and the other probably relatively minor things that weren't always, weren't necessarily what we were thinking was appropriate at HSAB. So
That elevation was one of my memory of our Historic Structures Advisory Board meeting was that top right window where there's a stairway and limited headspace was getting changed with the addition of of what they're calling a dormer. There.
Yeah, that was a big one for us.
But
got approved.
also the, you know, in today's guidelines, that addition that was done in the 20s or whatever that we're looking at in the bottom left corner with the chimney, you know, that wouldn't normally approvable now. It's flush additive massing rather than being pushed back. But because of the historic precedent for it, it makes sense for it to. But before there were large, I believe 12/12 windows flanking the fireplace. And so to bring the mass back and not the windows seems like a contradiction in process there. But the overall scope of the project and the care with which the owners are taking is wonderful. The scullery, as far as I know, is removed and then put back on again. So that'll be original material. So it's that addition in between that will be all new. But the reuse of the windows and the floors and like all the things that as preservationists we really champion. And so, you know, I don't want the good to be the perfect, the enemy of the perfect. So anyway,
Well, and also, I just want to note that our role here is very different from the role of the HDC, or, you know, we're not doing architectural review. I think what we're weighing in on is, according to their application, they are, they're planning to restore and rehabilitate certain features of the house. And these will be areas where they can submit qualified restoration expenses for up to 20% rebate from the federal government and up to 20% rebate from the state government. And we are being asked to support that the expense that the projects that they've flagged in their Part 2 application are indeed, you know, a worthwhile and qualified expense. So Holly, can I just share my screen, because I want to, you know, hopefully we'll be seeing a lot more of these applications. Yes, this is it. So this application with which Epsilon prepared, you know, goes through each feature. And Holly, I see you nodding, so I guess that means you think this is that I am in fact correct about what our role is here. So I'm just gonna get to the big.
And Hillary, if I may, I'm glad that you did bring that up, because there is a difference between the role of the HDC and the role of you all. So thank you for correcting that, you know, or clarifying that for the record.
So number one, she's saying exterior masonry and cladding is a contributing feature of this home and important for the history of the home. These are the dates. And so they're describing the condition, and then they're describing the work. And she's being very specific about, you know, it's selectively cleaned and reporting. So in other words, a non-historic rehabilitation or renovation might be just take it all out and put it all back, or, you know, overly clean it. But she's being very clear that they're consistent with the guidelines presented by the Park Service, which is to use the least invasive, to repair in kind, to not use overly abrasive cleaners. You know, so she's really specific about the process.
It's all exceptional. It's wonderful.
And then here are the windows. So again, calling out that the windows are an architectural feature of the home that is going to be restored. She describes them, talks about the work. And of course, all of this work is going to be more labor intensive and expensive, which is why she's getting the tax credit. And 3, the exterior entrances. So, you know, there are aspects that might be worth saving, but because of she's trying to meet a program for this house, and it's a rehabilitation, it's not a restoration, and the standard is rehabilitation for getting these tax credits. So anyway, I just think it's interesting the way I think we can learn from this application how each feature is called out, documented, its existing condition, described, the plan of work, and then that's what's going to inform the list of qualified expenses of over $3 million, which she's going to be asking for, you know, up to 40% rebate, which would be a terrific incentive to go through the extra detail of really rehabilitating this instead of just replacing everything. So any, can I have a motion as to whether or not we would support this as a candidate, support this application for tax credits?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so it looks like Angus got to you got pipped at the post there, Tom. And Georgia seconded to write this letter of support. So Holly, can you bring up the letter again?
There's a typo in the second paragraph, third line, where it says litter and it needs to be little alteration.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the third line
Thank
down
you.
in the second paragraph. Yeah. Little alteration of the landscape. So, so we've just as a commission moved to support this part 2 application. And now the question is, you know, as we hopefully see more and more of these applications, how do we want our letters to read? What's appropriate to say and not say? I certainly think this can be a letter from Holly. You know, Holly's writing the letter. I think people who write letters should sign the letters that they write. And I, as chair, you know, sometimes I want to sign a letter if it's something that, you know, I've written, but I think Holly should sign the letters that she writes and that she, you know, is writing on our behalf because we've had the chance to really go through it and talk about it and accept her recommendation. Does anybody else have any discussion on that idea?
Is that on our letterhead or? Holly?
Yes, it would be on our letterhead, which I think is important, and Holly has our letterhead. So yeah, it would be a letter signed by Holly on, but making it clear that it's on our letterhead.
Thank you. I like that idea. Appreciate that.
Can I make a motion to submit as written?
Well, I actually had a couple thoughts on that, on the letter. I'm just wondering, it says certain things that are sort of extra things other than just supporting. So it says like that, you know, the town of Nantucket tried to rectify these issues to no avail. I don't know what the town tried to do. I mean, it's not something we're discussing in our meeting.
It's not relevant to this.
And I don't know if it's relevant. Yeah. I think
Well,
it is. Go ahead, Holly. Why
sorry.
did you include it?
I included that because Sarah included that in her application. All the history of, and actually, if you look at that part, hold on, where is it right here? So if you look at the beginning of part, I'm looking at the right thing here. Sorry, I got so many different things up. The beginning of this packet, right here, I believe it is. It's referenced right here about basically an introduction into the property. And it does talk about the fact that why it's been sitting in neglect. And it does mention that there was, that the town was not in neglect from trying to rectify the concerns and the neglect that was from the previous owners. And the fact that she's outlining that with this, as well as not just stating it, but has record of support of that from the letters from the abutters, as well as the letters from the attorneys on behalf of the town and the HDC. So that's why I thought it would be important to notate that we acknowledge the fact that they're acknowledging it within their application as to why it sat in that deplorable condition for such a long time. And now, hey, look, now there's an opportunity with this new steward who, you know, is really should be championed in the fact that she's taking this structure that could have been just completely neglected and or, you know, possibly demolished, what have you, and actually is bringing it back to life. So that was the whole rationale.
This is Clement. I think it's important that that be acknowledged, because when she includes the whole thing about, I mean, obviously it goes to a different owner, but, you know, we should make the fact known that this is a different owner for sure, and an owner who is going to take care of the house. So you know, it is in deplorable condition. I'm glad to see the letters went out, and, you know, I don't know if the person was fined, but demolition by neglect is something that we should really fight to uphold. So I'm glad that's part of it. And I think it is in horrible shape. So it also says she's got a really hard job to bring this back. So it's very much appreciated. So I like that as part of it.
Thank you.
Do we know if the town ever fined the owners, the previous owner?
You know, I've seen stuff as early as 2019 when John Hedden was the administrator for the HDC. And that goes even farther back. I haven't personally looked at the file for 6 Gull Island, but I know both Epsilon and Sarah has been in depth in that file. I can't answer that without, you know, 100%.
Is it the HDC that determines if they need to be fined or not?
There's a
Yes.
process, yes. And that's Kathy as the HDC compliance coordinator. I only get notified, just so you're all are aware, I only get notified if it's a structure within the old historic districts. I get copied on any notice of violation. So, and again, I was not in this capacity at the last interval of an HDC administrator submitting something for, you know, the compliance with the HDC's guidelines.
Hillary. and
Yes,
Holly,
Georgia.
You're using rehabilitation and restoration almost interchangeably here. Does that matter?
Shouldn't be.
I mean, you're talking about proposed rehabilitation, and then you talk elsewhere about
Restoration.
we support the restoration proposal.
Yep. Thank you for bringing that up.
I
It
mean, I
should be
think-
rehabilitation.
Yeah, I mean,
Well-
there are areas that are being restored. I mean, she's restoring the windows.
Well, I
So-
think that if you're doing that knowingly, that's fine. I'm just, just wanted to point out that the phrases are being used without any clarification about whether, see, on the second paragraph, you support the restoration proposal.
Yep.
Sort of implies that you're not supporting the rehabilitation part. If you're going to make a distinction among them.
Well, it is a tax, and duly noted, and thank you for that. It is a tax rehabilitation credit. So I think just using the word rehabilitation would be sufficient, unless you all disagree.
So did anybody else want to comment on the letter? I'm sorry, I'm not looking for, do I see any other hands?
So by using rehabilitation through all these, we're not compromising anything for her for what she is actually restoring, correct?
And we can word that if there's something that would you would propose.
Well, I mean, we can just say it is a rehabilitation. And we can, instead of supports the rehabilitation proposal, we can just say we support the application. And
Perfect.
And rather than saying Six Gull Island in its entirety, I mean, there are other buildings, so there are other structures on the property. So I think, yeah. And about the, on the first paragraph, Holly, unless we actually find them, we didn't do everything that we could. And I think that, you know, the HDC doesn't really find people very often, as far as I know. It's been something we've been concerned about, but we haven't really talked about it. But I think it should say, and I also appreciate Clement's comment. So it could say, could you make it a little bigger?
Oh, yeah.
Straining here to see it. Thank you.
Mhm.
A structure that has undergone decades of deferred maintenance and neglect by previous owners. I think just striking, acknowledging that the town of Nantucket tried to rectify these issues to no avail. I mean, we don't know what they did. So deferred maintenance and neglect by previous owners, comma, will ultimately be preserved for future generations. It will not be lost to demolition by neglect.
So take this section out.
Yeah.
Okay, so does it make sense? So we just need to make the sentence make sense. So it needs
Yep.
something. And will ultimately, we'll take a contributing structure that's underground and preserve it for future generations. So get rid of it, will ultimately be. Just say will preserve it. Does that make sense?
We'll take a contributing structure and preserve it for future generations.
So for future generations, comma, so it will not be lost to demolition by neglect.
Right.
Future generations, comma, so it,
And take out and.
yeah. Okay. So we support the island as it will preserve it. Is it correct to say it's undergone little alteration to the landscape?
Yes, that is actually right out of their application.
Okay.
Significant application.
Instead of saying ensure the feeling, can we say will contribute to?
Mhm.
Okay. Is there any other request for changes to the letter?
Since we're being so minute about this, can we say atmosphere instead of feeling of the 1800s? I don't know what you feel about the 1800s, but I do think atmosphere.
You
is
know,
more-
interesting, Georgia, feeling is actually one of the official qualities of
Mhm.
historic integrity.
What, right?
It's
Well-
actually a defined term.
Okay, then sorry about that.
I know it was a surprise to me too, but it's true.
Good heavens.
Yeah, it is. It's
It's
that
part of that whole
intangible-
sense of place.
that intangible quality. Can you go to the second page, Holly? And oh, sorry, on this at the end, can we get, I'm sorry, can we not say grandeur? because
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
it's sort of a humble place, and that's what's nice about it. To its
Origins.
Original
restore-
character,
just say to restore the Hannah Garden. To,
restore the Hannah Garden House.
well, we're not restoring it. I mean, typical Nantucket South home. Part as the historical. Oh, actually, I wanted to suggest that I wanted to suggest that maybe we take this out as the historical commissions, but it just seems a little bit excessive. Like, of course they're doing their job. I mean, and from the comments from Mickey and Angus, actually HSAB thought that there were some things that should have been different. So
I do notate that. However, as I remind everybody, and I would be remiss if I don't, at the end of the day, all advisory board comments, as well as my own as preservation planner, are as an advisement. And that's up to the commission to take those into
Yeah.
consideration or not.
Yes.
Even the public will tell me, well, they listened to you. Well, not necessarily. So
yeah,
I just
no, we
wanted to
know
make that for the record.
okay. Okay, I think I'm satisfied with that. Can we look at, and that's it, right? Yeah. And this can come from you, Holly. And you can just copy me. Great.
So I'll make a motion to submit as edited.
Seconded.
Okay. Any discussion on that? All right,
Good
so I'll
job.
thank you. I'll take a vote. Let's see. Clement,
Yes.
Angus,
Aye.
Georgia,
I,
Tom,
Aye.
Mickey,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
and I am also an I. It's so great to see this application coming through, and I'm really happy for Sarah that she can hopefully get paid by the government to do this wonderful work on a registered building in such an important area.
Thank you. I think she will probably, once things are, settle down, probably be more than happy to help in that, to propose, to get it out there and
Yeah.
talk to people of what it all entails. But
Well,
I
I'm going to out Mary Bergman. I saw her with a camera in a video down there yesterday when I was biking around. So I think we're going to have some really good information about this house. On this topic, I also want to pass on, David and I got some exciting news. I spoke with Marion Connolly yesterday, who is the education coordinator at NARAB, and she confirmed that indeed they will be offering the course on selling historic homes in October for one of their continuing education trainings. And she invited me to contact Anita Hill, their trainer, to arrange for customization of this curriculum to Nantucket. So that will include our participation. We can include Holly, if you would be willing to represent the review process with the HTC. And maybe, I don't know if Mary's still on or if she dropped off, we'll reach out to Mary to go over some of the architectural issues. There's lots that we can do to make this a wonderful program for the realtors and really get across the importance of maintaining historic integrity of our homes and how to help your clients come to that conclusion as well.
perfect, great news.
I have to say, I can't be more thrilled. I mean, maybe I'm just being a geek here, but like this was one of our really important goals for the year, was to partner with the real estate group and work with them directly to raise awareness about historic homes. And with David's help and with Dawn's help, we were able to identify a path to do that, and a trainer who was willing to to make it happen, and people from NARB. So, you know, knock on wood, it's not actually there yet. And I think it's going to be at the Nantucket Hotel there. That's pending confirmation, but that will also ensure a good turnout. And that hotel was built with the help of over $1 million of tax credits from the state government. So that'll be nice to be able to point out to everybody as well.
Great, excellent. That's a great result.
Any other comments or announcements? Our next meeting is August 20th. And we don't have the agenda yet, but we do have our grant underway. I mean, Holly, is it like, is it stuck? Like, do you need help? Is it stuck or is it?
No, no, it's not stuck. I was I was in between finance and MHC. So now I've got comments back from finance. I
Oh,
can
good.
collaborate it all together and address the concerns that I received from MHC, get their blessing and get it going. So our time frame is a little, you know, lagged a little bit, but no, we're good.
Still in the range of acceptable.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. I did request yet again to present to the select board, and I have yet again received radio silence. I don't know what's going on.
Well,
Holly,
they are busy, and I do know they're on their summer schedule. So for instance, they didn't have one this week. So that probably means that their agendas, if they're only meeting every other week, they're probably extensive, but I will reach out again and see what they can give us. Again, my recommendation would be, I am waiting to get the grant contract, the required contract between the town and the state. That goes before the select board for their endorsement and then town manager's signature. I am waiting for that to be received from MHC, and then I have to forward it to finance for them to request it. I cannot do that. They need to do that to the select board. So that's the policy and procedure. So once I receive that and do that, we'll be before the select board for their blessing for that contract. But I'm waiting for receiving the contract before we can do that. So it would be nice if it could all be done on the same agenda, but I don't know. So
I just so you know what we're requesting as a commission, it's just a 10-minute update, what we've been doing, what we've achieved, what we want to do, and an opportunity for the select board to suggest things that we might work on and to ask questions so that we can all stay on the same page. We haven't given them an update in a year, and we want to do it in the summer, you know, when there are a lot of people who are seasonal residents who index quite high on caring about preservation, and they're here reading the paper, they can come to meetings. They're engaged in the summer. So, you know, the purpose of the select board, they have a policy about how, if you have something you want to announce to the board to brief the community on, there's a policy, and we're following the policy, and we're just not even getting a response. So I think it's, frankly, I don't know, not very cool, but they're not even emailing me back. But maybe you can help, Holly, work your magic. Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Clement,
Aye.
Georgia,
Hi.
Tom,
Aye.
Mickey,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Angus.
Aye.
And I am also an aye. Thank you, everyone. I know it's a long meeting, and to Holly.